Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be here today, honored to be addressing you this afternoon. I'm excited because I've been at Meta for a long time, actually longer than 98% of current Meta's employees. So I've been through a couple of industrial revolutions in my time over the past years that many of us have experienced. But the one I'm about to discuss today is by far the one that excites me the most, the Metaverse. So the first question that comes every time we discuss the Metaverse is, what is really the Metaverse, right? And I want to be clear that Meta is not the Metaverse. We are part of the construction of the Metaverse, and probably the definition I will offer today might slightly vary compared to yours. Ultimately, it's our collective effort in building the Metaverse that will define what it ends up being. But let me propose one way to think about it. And I think what we will all agree on is that the Metaverse is the next iteration of Internet, simply. And we will be accessing the Metaverse through our smartphones, our PCs, but also VR headsets, AR glasses, and why not, Meta portals. Actually, there are different ways for us to enter the Metaverse. There is a walk-in version of the future of Internet, where we immerse ourselves fully into these 3D immersive worlds. Some of them purely creative, completely invented from scratch, others reflecting the reality of a space somewhere else in the world. And there is also an invite-out version of the Internet, a space in which we will be augmenting our reality using AR. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to really picture what the Metaverse will be. And we often, if we're honest with ourselves, have that skeptical voice internally on whether or not this is really going to materialize and whether this is truly something significant. And in reality, this is human. We have seen that being a pattern over time. Bikes were qualified as just a fad. Cars were deemed to be impractical. Actually, in 1985, the New York Times published an article stating that portable computers were an illusion. And in fact, they were right. At the time, it was an illusion. They were very heavy, they had a very small battery life, they were not practical at all, and they were very expensive. But in the span of 20 years, what happened? 3 key factors came together. Many different companies understood that there was a strong consumer behavior that required for us to shift in the way we operated and work together. So tech companies invested massively in evolving the technology. Microchips became a lot smaller and much more powerful, batteries a lot lighter and lasted a lot longer, and more importantly, the total cost of manufacturing laptops dropped significantly. And what this meant is that this became something that 15 years later became a mass market product and actually evolved towards smartphones and for many of us, even smartwatches. What we believe is that these 3 ingredients that triggered that revolution, that accelerated the evolution of laptops, are the same ingredients that are going to bring us into the Metaverse. And that we are reaching a tipping point in which this is going to scale. So if you allow me, I'll kind of detail that a little bit further. Let's start with consumer trends. For those of us that have kids, if we look at the next generation, we know that they spend more time today in VR environments, in immersive worlds, than they do in front of TV. They actually have friends that they consider to be close, that they have never met in real life. The new generation is a lot more sustainably orientated than we are, or that we were, and actually that we are becoming more and more. The need for presence is something that always existed. If you think about it, letters, then the telegram, fax, emails, text messages, WhatsApp, video calls, and today, these 3D, 360 immersive experiences. 3D beats 2D, 2D beats audio, audio beats text. We all aspire for a meaningful way to connect with each other. Convenience is also a massive driver. Actually, when we ask our users, over 2/3 of them tell us that they would much rather test the product and engage with the product virtually in their living room than going into a shop. Curiosity is also a massive consumer behavior driver. Actually, what we call content creators or influencers are the ones that are hacking new technologies to create new models, new ways to communicate, engage with each other. And finally, as we touched on, this notion of sustainability is driving consumer behavior changes. We are starting to consider if or not jumping on a plane is worth it, or if we can actually experience these without having to travel. From a business point of view, it's the same story. We work with millions of business leaders across the world, and they literally all tell us, 75% of them tell us actually, that they intend to use VR and AR in the short term. It's not only about consumer behavior, though. From a technological point of view, there's been a shift. Computing power increased massively. 5G is rolling out, so connectivity is allowing us to imagine new forms of connections. The devices are becoming stronger. They're actually becoming better. The lenses allow us to have a much more immersive experience. And the cost of manufacturing drops significantly. It's actually cheaper today to buy an Oculus set than it is to buy an iPhone. And finally, and probably most importantly, artificial intelligence is allowing us today to imagine new scenarios, new ways of using these technologies that a couple of years back seemed to be science fiction. If you think about it, there is billions of smartphones out there. And the vast majority of them already have AR capabilities. So that shift towards AR is already happening. From a business point of view, there are many different areas that are shifting. Collaboration, we've seen it during the pandemic, where we needed to work remotely and engage and connect with people that we had never met, new colleagues. This has created a fantastic use case for VR, forced us to consider these technologies. We'll see a few examples after. Learning and development is also a massive opportunity. And actually, if you read the press, you will see every day business leaders pushing the boundaries of their value chain to integrate the metaverse, to redefine how their business will evolve in the next years. From a consumer or marketing point of view, the metaverse, or the premise of the metaverse, AR and VR, is already impacting the customer journey. And we'll look at a couple of interesting examples of how it's been done. Finally, back to this notion of the ingredients that are triggering this shift, this industrial shift. What's interesting is the amount of companies globally that are investing massively in R&D, in capital, in research, in building the metaverse. The total investments related to AR and VR are expected to be multiplied by 6 by 2025. Actually, there is a recent study that was published just a few days ago that estimates that the metaverse will represent $360 billion over the next decade as a contribution to GDP, 6.2%. So if you take these three ingredients, the demand from consumers, the technology advancement, and the amount of companies that are investing in developing that space, it becomes a lot more tangible. It becomes something that we can grasp is coming towards us. So the next question that often comes is, what can I do as a business leader when it comes to the metaverse today? And I think the best way to address that is to think about the capabilities that already exist. Let's start with VR. The first industry that stepped into these immersive walk-in spaces is the gaming industry. Probably you all heard of Minecraft or Second Life, these kind of 3D worlds that you can enter. I encourage you all to not think of them only as experiences that are relevant for kids or gamers, but more as the premise of what might be coming for all of us across generations for the coming years. And once you think about it this way, it becomes a playground, a testing space where you can bring to life some concepts that might not today exist in any other spaces. VR allows us today to experience things together in a way that wasn't possible before, from wherever you are in the world. Actually, a great example of that was in this region, in Expo, a couple of months ago, where we had a concert with a couple of thousand people in the dome, and 35 million people globally connected into that concert. And that experience was filmed 3D, so if you had a VR headset, you could immerse yourself fully into the concert, as if you were in the best seat in that dome. And if you didn't have one of these VR headsets, if you're not part of these 100 million of people that actually already use this VR headset, you could still experience the concert in a super immersive way with your smartphone or your laptop, where you're moving around, getting a sense of what the experience was, getting very close to the performers. What this means is that essentially any hotel room, any rooftop, any bar or restaurant, tomorrow could become one of the biggest concert halls in the world. The boundaries that are existing from our physical world are being pushed virtually. And when you think about experiencing things together, of course, one of the areas in which we're seeing very strong use cases from now is sport. And in the hospitality industry, we know the importance of gyms in hotels and how much people look at that as a selling point. There are opportunities for us to rethink how this will evolve in the coming years, how we can keep people connected with their family or with their gym group, wherever they might be in the world. Learning together is also something that VR enables us. There is great cases where surgeons are starting to train in the VR world before they hit reality. There's actually a fantastic example in the hospitality industry with Hilton.
Every day at the corporate office, we make decisions that impact the team members at the hotel. So we really needed to make sure that our corporate team members understand the complexity of working in a hotel. Options for businesses really shifted the way we work. Really upskill team members faster and really focus on empathy building, which was the game changer for us.
We then said we can use this tool to be able to really help our team members practice different scenarios of building empathy with our guests and make sure that we are delivering best-in-class service.
Hi, I'm here to check in.
If we were to try to do this in a traditional setting, when you have 40,000 team members, that is not something that comes in an inexpensive way for us, and nor do I think it's realistic.
Every time there's been a significant advancement in the way you interact with the computers, something great happens. So when the Quest came out, it was groundbreaking for us, because just like that, we had 60 possibilities for your experience. Having all this available to you allows you to concentrate in what's most important, getting what the client sees when he closes their eyes and making it happen.
To me, virtual reality is absolutely the future of learning. It just genuinely immerses the team member in the experience.
Once you see this and experience how much it can build empathy and change behavior, it's really the best tool by which we can simulate a real experience.
When clients ask, how can we develop this, how can we create this for the masses, now we have an answer for them, request.
It's a very good example of how tangibly from now VR is transforming the value chain. Hilton was able to shrink a 4-hour training to 20 minutes and make it a lot more scalable than it was ever before. Being together in the metaverse or in a virtual world is clearly one of the key opportunities that the metaverse allows us to work on. And we've seen in our industry a couple of emerging examples where hotels are starting to think about the future of hospitality, and they are creating these virtual hotels online that are becoming meeting spots. Another great example is with Citizen M, where they're bringing together artists, and there is this vision of having this physical twin where essentially the metaverse and the real world will come together and people will be able to interact with artists from all over the world and actually buy their art with NFTs. So we are at the very beginning of that journey where some of these opportunities are starting to emerge. I think it's interesting to also touch on AR. That is very tangibly being used by hundreds of brands all around the world today. Let me go through the customer journey with you. From discovery, where you have this car that you can visit with your phone without having to ever go into a dealership. Or this example from Pringles that I actually love, because a Pringle box is something that is, not something you typically interact with. And here it comes to life, it becomes fun. It becomes something you enjoy interacting with. Or in Disney, where you could project yourself in the park and get a sense of what the experience is so that you kind of progress on this idea of maybe bringing your family there. There are examples also that are a little bit lower into the funnel when it comes to kind of generating demand, where you can take a piece of furniture that you're interested in and project it into your living room. We actually use AR to attract talents. Fighting for talents is complex, specifically in the tech world, and we're trying to create these experiences that project what we are working on so that talent can understand what's the opportunity that Meta represents for them. There are also great examples of how we can bring to life these sales moments that, every industry has, but sometimes are a little bit dull. What's interesting is how the metaverse, or these experiences, allows us to experience a product before buying it. This example is fantastic, where you get into this shark tank and you get a sense of what it will be to experience being in that cage. And as you progress through the experience, you probably saw it. There is a button that you can click and you can book straight from that VR immersive experience. Before I finish, I want to say a couple of things that are important. First of all, over the past 15 years, we've been through a couple of revolutions when it comes to technology, and I think we learned a lot from it. We have principles that we are adopting in how we're designing and building that future. We want to do it with a strong sense of respect for people and users, with no surprise along the way, giving them control of how they can experience these platforms. We want to do it in a way that will allow for everyone to enjoy these experiences, taking in consideration everybody. And we want to do it in an extremely collaborative way with all the different organizations, partners from the different industries that are existing and keen to engage with us. To finish, I'd like to ask a small question, a little bit of an exercise. We do a little bit of brain rewiring together. The question is simple, and if you know the answer to that question, please do not say it. But if you don't, please lean in and try and guess. If I had a piece of paper in my hand today that was as big as it needs to be, how many times do I need to fold that piece of paper for it to be as thick to reach the moon? Any idea? There's somebody that doesn't know? Take a guess. Any other guess? Actually, this is a good answer. A lot of us tend to think it's millions, right? Because we're trained to think sequentially. We actually learn to walk one step after the other. The way I think about this is that this is actually the opposite of ambition. Incrementalism is the enemy of ambition. For us to really grasp the opportunity that the metaverse represents for our industry, we need to think exponentially. What is the 1000x experience that we can create from today that will materialize in the next few years and that will transform our industry? So the answer to this question is actually 42. All you need to do is fold it 42 times. So you are not that far. And most people actually guess much bigger numbers. So what I encourage you all is, even if it might feel far away, start thinking today exponentially on what this might mean for your business. And what are the first steps that you can take to bring this to life? It was a pleasure to be here today, and if you have any questions, I'll be around after. Thank you.